Ebony Smith lived in Houston County, Georgia. Behind the quiet life, there were tensions, divorce, children, custody arrangements. These stresses were more than legal papers. They were arguments over who gets to protect, to see, to raise a life. On a summer day, July 15, 2011, a confrontation in Houston County escalated in ways no one predicted. According to court records, Ebony and her ex-partner were engaged in a battle over custody of their child. The fight was serious, emotionally charged, with deep hurt. In the moment that followed, Ebony pulled out a gun and shot him. He died from his wounds. Ebony was accused of taking lethal action against her ex-partner. The charge: murder. She was arrested on November 29th of that same year. The case moved into the courtroom. Evidence presented included testimony of what happened that day, statements from both sides, and arguments over who felt threatened and who acted in fear. Ebony's defense leaned on the turmoil of their split, the emotional weight of custody disputes, and her own sense of desperation. The prosecution pointed to intent and capability. In August 2013, the case went to trial. The jury heard hours of evidence. On August 7, 2013, they delivered a verdict: guilty. Ebony Smith was convicted of malice murder plus related charges, including use of a firearm during a crime. She was sentenced to life in prison. Appeals followed. Lawyers debated whether the evidence satisfied the high standard, whether any errors in the trial could overturn the verdict. But in 2014, Georgia's Supreme Court upheld her conviction and sentence. Ebony Smith would be required to serve life. Darren Roy Mack, a successful businessman from Reno, Nevada. He co-owned a pawn and jewelry shop. On the surface, he had what many desire: money, status, a life built over time. But beneath, things were unraveling. Over a marriage that went sideways, over a court order he believed punished him. He and his wife, Charla Mack, were in the midst of a bitter divorce. Legal filings, child custody battles, financial settlements. A judge named Charles Chuck Weller was presiding over the case. In May 2006, Weller ordered Darren to pay significant alimony and support payments, orders Darren felt were unfair, burdensome, and humiliating. On the morning of June 12, 2006, something pushed Darren over the edge. Charla Mack was found stabbed to death in her garage. Early, shocking, violent. The world shook. The same day, only hours later, Judge Weller was shot, wounded but alive, outside his courtroom. The two events seemed too connected to be coincidence. They were. Immediately, suspicion fell on Darren. He had motive, resentment over the court's decision. He had opportunity, and evidence began to accumulate. A to-do list found in his home with cryptic entries like "end problem," warnings, omens. Then, Darren went on the run. For 10 days, law enforcement searched. He crossed into Mexico. The country was in shock. The headlines couldn't ignore it. In Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, far from home, Darren surrendered. He carried cash, credit cards, a suitcase with possessions. He was returned to Reno, facing not only the murder charge, but also the attempted murder of Judge Weller. The case would become a spectacle. Courtroom drama, public outrage, questions about responsibility, sanity, blame. In November 2007, with trial looming, Darren made a deal. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder for Charla's death and took an Alford plea for the attempted murder charges related to Judge Weller. Under this plea, he didn't admit guilt for the judge's shooting, but accepted that prosecutors had enough evidence to convict. He received life in prison for Charla's murder, plus an additional sentence for the attempted shooting of the judge. The two terms would run consecutively, ensuring he remained behind bars for decades. In addition to his criminal convictions, Darren faced civil consequences. Charla's family filed a wrongful death suit. In 2008, a civil jury awarded $590 million in damages to Charla's daughter and her estate. It was a legal judgment that echoed the tragedy. even if it couldn't undo the violence. Throughout it all, Darren claimed self-defense in the garage that morning, saying Charla was aggressive, that he acted frightened. His defense also tried to show mental strain, anger, desperation. But the prosecution emphasized premeditation. The list, the actions, the preparation. A judge-ordered financial burden had become his focal point, and in his mind, maybe his justification. Today, Darren Mack is incarcerated in Nevada, serving his sentence. She was a woman called Rita Gluzman, born in 1948 in what was then Soviet Ukraine. Her early life wasn't easy. Her parents were Holocaust survivors. She survived hardship, displacement, and trauma. She fell in love with a man she had known since childhood, Yakov Gluzman, a scientist. They married, migrated, and built a life together in the United States. On the outside, things looked successful. But beneath the surface, shadows were gathering. By the mid-1990s, cracks began to show. Yakov filed for divorce. He accused Rita of misuse of their shared business funds. Rita said Yakov was exploring a relationship with someone else. Accusations piled up. Emotional distance, betrayal, financial disputes. It was the kind of personal conflict many fear, but few expect to turn deadly. One spring morning in 1996, their conflict reached its darkest turn. A man called Vladimir Zelenin, Rita's cousin, became involved. According to what prosecutors later presented, Rita persuaded Zelenin to help her. The plan was chilling. As Yakov came home, the two ambushed him. Rita allegedly struck first. Zelenin helped carry out the rest. Together, they ended his life. After the killing, there was more than grief. There was also a cover-up. Body parts were chopped up, placed in garbage bags, intended for disposal in places where they might never be found. Rita fled. She disappeared for days. Her car had been rigged with a stolen license plate. Travel brochures were found in her possession. It seemed she was preparing to leave the country. Investigators pieced together what had happened. Evidence included testimony from Zelenin, who later became a key witness. He told how Rita had bought tools, an axe, a saw, and instructed him in disposing of the body. Prosecutors argued she acted out of fear of a divorce, fear of losing control over finances and reputation. Others saw it as cold vengeance. The trial was intense. Rita insisted she was innocent of the planning, claimed much of what Zelenin said was unreliable, but the jury listened. In April 1997, she was convicted under a federal law, Interstate Domestic Violence resulting in death, the Violence Against Women Act, becoming the first woman convicted under that statute for murder. She was given life in prison. Years later, Rita Gluzman was granted compassionate release in 2020 due to serious health issues, multiple strokes, early Parkinson's disease. She was released under supervision to reside with her sister, with conditions including monitoring. There was a man called Ray Elmer Miller, living in Nevada in the early 1930s. On paper, he was an ordinary husband, but behind closed doors, there were tensions, jealousy, grief, suspicions, and maybe obsession. Ray married a young woman named Evelyn Potter, who came from Mesquite, Nevada. They had a child together, a daughter named Peggy. But shortly after Peggy was born, the marriage began to fray. Evelyn filed for divorce around November 30th, 1932. Things between them deteriorated sharply after that. Now, Evelyn had been working, moving about, choosing to separate. Ray reportedly stalked her. He followed her, waited in his truck, watched her at her place of work. He blamed her for every perceived slight. Worse, Evelyn's infant daughter died, the child named Peggy. Ray believed that Evelyn had neglected Peggy or was somehow responsible. That belief haunted him. On December 1st, 1932, something snapped. Evelyn was walking upstairs to her divorce lawyer's office in downtown Las Vegas. Ray waited for her, pistol in hand. Under a false name, he had bought a weapon just days before. And when Evelyn appeared, he opened fire. A bullet struck her in the lower back. It passed through her body, injuring vital organs. Evelyn collapsed on the stairway. Other patrons in the lobby were stunned. Some tried to help. Some fled. Ray did not immediately attempt to flee. Witnesses say he remained in the theater's diner area of the building, which was attached to Evelyn's lawyer's office on the upper floor, as chaos erupted. He fired another shot that misfired or jammed. People nearby restrained him. Others called the authorities. The situation ended with Ray being arrested. Evelyn was rushed to a hospital but died soon after from her wound. At trial, Ray's defense was that he was insane, or at least temporarily out of his right mind. He spoke in court about trauma. He claimed that the death of his infant daughter had broken him. He also referenced physical ailments, past injuries, and something called syphilis, which was said to have affected him. The defense argued that these things together had undermined his state of mind. The prosecution countered that regardless of grief or illness, Ray had made choices. He planned parts, acquiring the gun, buying ammunition, waiting for the moment. He knew what he was doing when Evelyn walked in. The jury did not accept the insanity plea. They found Ray Elmer Miller guilty of first-degree murder. The sentence: death. He was executed in May 1933 at the Nevada State Prison gas chamber. The case quickly became infamous in local papers. Wife slayer, jealous husband revenge, tragic breakdown. Evelyn's family spoke in sorrow. Ray's name became a cautionary example of how grief, anger, and obsession can spiral into violence.